Hello there, everyone. Good night. I am Dr. Tharp, a board certified internal medicine. And as I say every night, I am here on the mission to help everyone who is struggling with type 2 diabetes, with high blood sugars, to reverse their numbers naturally. So that's what brings me here every night. And so I want to help those who are struggling with anxiety about high blood sugars, who feel like they're doing it on their own. They're not sure what they're doing. And they're struggling with the anxiety, the worry that they're going to face complications, that they're already experiencing complications. You've watched family members have complications, and now you're worried that that could be you. And so that is what brings me here every night so that I can empower you with the knowledge that you need to actually feel more in control of your blood sugars. For those of you who don't know who I am and what my background is, I do two jobs. I'm a hospital medicine doctor where I routinely see the complications of type 2 diabetes on a daily basis. The complications of diabetes include kidney failure, it's amputations of toes, of feet, of entire limbs. It's heart attacks, it's strokes. So the complications of type 2 diabetes, it takes such a tremendous toll on people. And I witness that toll firsthand every day. And that is what inspired me to take on my second job, right? And actually, it's my most important job. And that is establishing my preventative medicine practice focused on reversing type 2 diabetes naturally and helping those who truly want to do it, to avoid medications, to do it successfully. Because there are some people out there who are adamant they don't want to be on medications, but they make a major mistake. And that mistake is doing nothing. Or the other mistake is trying to do it on your own and it's not working, and you still don't get the help that you need, and you don't take the medication. And that's where you get into more trouble, right? So I want you to feel, to walk away from this live tonight feeling like you have a better understanding of why your blood sugars are not responding to what you're doing, and for you to have at least some information about what you can do to drive your numbers down. And I call it the system. Okay, it's a system that I have implemented successfully to help women especially get their blood sugars down successfully. And so I'm pretty confident in the system. And the system that I'm going to discuss is really the only approach that works. Now, something that I see a lot with the women who I work with, though, is when they first come to me, they are doing a lot of things based on myths, based on things that aren't true. They're taking a lot of advice from Google, from social media, and they're trying to incorporate that into their lives. They're trying to use it as a way of naturally combating blood sugars, and they're not having any success. And so I wanted to share with you some of these myths that you could potentially be doing, and that could be number one, wasting time. It's making you hover with high blood sugars and opening you up to the risk of even more complications from diabetes, from high blood sugar. So I wanted to share with you some of the top myths. There's a lot of myths that I encounter as I talk to women who are struggling on a day-to-day basis. But some of the top myths that I encounter, and the first one and the most common question I get is about fruit. um, it's a repetitive question. If I'm a type 2 diabetic, can I eat fruit? And so a lot of people believe fruit is natural, it's healthy, so I can have as much fruit as I want as a type 2 diabetic. And the answer to that is you cannot. Okay, so fruit, even though fruit is healthy, fruit is natural, what's healthy for the general population, the average person without type 2 diabetes, is not necessarily healthy for someone with type 2 diabetes. Now, am I saying you should not be eating fruit, period? I'm not saying that either. The question is, are you eating the right fruits? That is where your question lies. You should be eating fruits that are going to help maintain good blood sugars. It's not going to push your blood sugars up. And there are fruits that do that. Okay, so let's talk about the fruits that are not necessarily a good option for you. The first fruit is mango. I know we are in or the tail end of mango season right now. And I know that there's a lot of you out there indulging in your love of mangoes, but you're trading that off of high blood sugars. Unfortunately, mango has a very high glycemic index. So that is a word. If you have a notepad with you, please take this note. When you are choosing your fruits, you want to go with fruits that have a low glycemic index. Those are the fruits that are best. A low glycemic index, you also want to go for fruits that are high in fiber. So your mango is not the right option. Banana is not the right option as well. Those are have very high glycemic index and get you into trouble very quickly. So again, you want to focus on fruits that have a low glycemic index. That glycemic index should be in maybe the 30 range. 30s is a safe range. And so some examples of fruits that are excellent for someone with diabetes are your berries. You can't go wrong with berries. So you want to go with your blueberries, your blackberries, your blueberries, blackberries, strawberries. So anything that ends in berry, very likely is going to work for you. So you want to go for high fiber content fruit and fruit with low glycemic index. And that's how you know that that is one you can do. Now, does that mean eat endless blueberries or and eat endless strawberries? It does. It doesn't mean that either. So you do have to be cognizant of how much, and how much is really dependent on how much your body can take, and that's really a discussion to have one on one. To be honest, it's very difficult to give a ballpark about how much you should be having, but you cannot overindulge either. So I would aim for maybe one serving of fruit, and you don't want to go for those big, fruit salads with multiple mixtures in there. You want to probably have one fruit, focus on one fruit. So that answers the question about fruit. You cannot have all that you want. I say you have to eat only certain amounts. And when you're choosing, you want to go for low glycemic index and high fiber content. The next myth that I come across is intermittent fasting. That one is huge. So, is intermittent fasting a good tool that will help you reverse type 2 diabetes successfully? And the answer is intermittent fasting alone definitely will not reverse type 2 diabetes. A lot of people, so intermittent fasting or fasting does play a role when it comes to achieving good blood sugars. But the big question is how to fast, the approach to fasting. And I will say a majority of the women who I work with, when they come to me, they're eating one meal a day, they're intermittent fasting, and they're getting into a lot of trouble doing it. And they're super frustrated because they're doing it and they're not seeing any results. Okay. And that answers, so intermittent fasting alone won't achieve that result. The trouble that you get into with intermittent fasting is that you become very restrictive, right? So, again, a lot of people out there, a lot of social media influencers, creators are pushing intermittent fasting, and they will tell you don't eat anything until noon. Okay, so you skip breakfast, you head out to work. Now you're halfway through your day, you're famished. Now you're ready to eat. But guess what? You eat and you just want more and more. Now your cravings are through the roof, right? It's you're miserable by time you're eating. You're low energy, right? Because you skipped your breakfast and you went straight to that noontime meal, and now you're famished. You ate. You're not satisfied. Your cravings are going through the roof, and you're miserable. Okay, so intermittent fasting leads to those feelings, and that just exacerbates frustration. The other problem with intermittent fasting is you eat that meal at noon, and now there's pressure to eat within this eating window by 5 p.m. So you might get another meal in. Sometimes you don't get that second meal in. So you're eating one or two meals for the day. And what ends up happening is that you are not feeding your body, you're not nourishing your body. And what tends to happen is you eat the wrong things because your cravings are going through the roof. So the choice of food that you're eating is all wrong as well. And so what tends to happen there is you get low energy even more. And yes, with intermittent fasting, you may achieve some weight loss, but the problem there is that weight just comes back on because that vicious cycle is not sustainable. So you end up regaining the weight, and guess what happens? Now you have that extra fat on your body, and in the process of losing the weight, you lost some muscle as well. And so you never want to lose muscle when you're trying to control blood sugar. That's the last thing you want to lose. So it's just you end up in a lot of trouble doing it that way. So the approach to intermittent fasting has to be the right approach for blood sugar control and for the right weight loss, meaning fat loss. We want to maintain muscle. So the way you do intermittent fasting must be structured so that you are maintaining muscle on your body and just losing fat. And you don't want to make your cravings worse, right? Who wants to feel miserable? You never want to do something that feels like a crash diet. And unfortunately, when you do intermittent fasting the wrong way, you feel like you're on a crash diet. You can't keep it up. So that's how you get into trouble with intermittent fasting. Now, how do you do fasting the right way? Well, just to sum it up, fast at night, right? If you fast from 6 p.m. until, let's say, 8 a.m., then you're looking at potentially a 14-hour fasting window, right? So you definitely want to make sure that you spend your time eating from the morning into the evening, and that you're nourishing your body. So that's the trouble that you get into when it comes to intermittent fasting. Now I'm gonna have to pause because my computer is low and I need to grab my charger. So I'm gonna pause for just a moment. If you guys will just hang on here, let me just grab my charger so the computer doesn't shut off on me. Let me grab my charger. 1 second. All right. I'm sorry about that. All right. So, intermittent fasting, there's the right way to do it, there's a wrong way to do it. The right way is spend the fasting time at night. Okay, nighttime is easy because you should be sleeping the whole time. You don't have time to, you're not going through miserable cravings at night when you're sleeping, right? So, and that's another big hint, is that you should be getting adequate sleep at night. So intermittent fasting, fast at night, spend your day nourishing your body with what it needs to get through the day. That way you're not getting the low energy, you're not getting the terrible cravings, you're not miserable. And you're giving yourself the nutrients it needs to maintain your muscle, which is so important for maintaining blood sugar. Now, the other myth that I come across a lot is um, the supplements. Our supplements are supplements going to improve blood sugar on its own? And my answer to that is absolutely not. Supplements have no role by themselves when it comes to reversing type 2 diabetes naturally. So it's really important to know that from the get-go, so you are not wasting your time. There are people who waste years taking supplements, hoping that supplements alone will keep them off of medications. And the reality is, supplements will not do that by itself. Your diet is what does that. Nutrition is 80 to 90% of blood sugar control. Is 80 to 90% of the physique you want, is 80 to 90% of the good feeling that you want. So your nutrition is really, really important when it comes to reversing type 2 diabetes. There are other factors that come into play. We have to talk about the habits, day-to-day habits. We have to talk about physical activity. We have to talk about the whole system. But again, supplements will not get your blood sugars under control. Now, the other myth that I come across a lot is vegetarian. Should I become a vegetarian to fix my blood sugars? And I would say, if you are already a vegetarian, that's one thing. If you've been a vegetarian and it was not because of diabetes, then that's fine. Okay, I'll cover that in a minute. But if you are thinking of becoming a vegetarian just so you can reverse type 2 diabetes naturally, that's a big mistake. Becoming a vegetarian might actually get you into more trouble, because now you're venturing into a realm where you really don't know what to do. And as a vegetarian, you really have to understand how to balance things out. So, as a vegetarian, you have to understand how to get your protein, how you're getting your vitamins like B12 in. You have to have a good understanding of, if you're cutting meat out of your diet, how are you going to make up for that? But as a type 2 diabetic, if you're making up for protein, you're also making up for a lot more carbohydrates, right? So you're getting your protein from beans and lentils and chickpeas, but those have carbohydrates in there. So you have to understand how to balance those things out as well, which takes a lot more expertise. It takes a lot more savvy to do that. So that's why you can actually get yourself into more trouble if you venture into becoming a vegetarian and you're not aware of the pitfalls. Okay. And if you are a vegetarian, then that is where you really should be doing this with the help of a nutritionist. Because again, you can get into a lot of trouble. Because again, you have to balance your carbohydrates, your proteins, your fats, and you have to do it in a way that's going to control your blood sugars. So that is important to keep in mind as well. So that is a myth. Becoming a vegetarian is not going to fix your blood sugar issues. Um, Now, the last one that I wanted to talk about was healthy. I'm eating healthy. I'm eating healthy, but my blood sugars are still high. Well, something I always stress is, what's healthy for the average person is not necessarily healthy for someone with type 2 diabetes. So, just like the fruit we talked about, fruit is healthy, but you still have to understand how to balance your fruit intake. It's the same thing with the foods like oatmeal. Oatmeal is considered healthy. The steel cut oats or rolled oats is considered healthy. The instant oats is trash. So I would not go for instant oats at all. So just get that out of the way. But if you're doing steel cut oats, that's a good quality oats. However, even though it's healthy, you can get into trouble with oats. So you have to again understand how much of carbohydrates does your body need and how do you balance that into your daily diet according to what your body needs in terms of carbohydrates so that you can maintain good blood sugars. So fruit, oatmeal, cereal, there's a lot of cereals out there that say no sugar added. There's a lot of cereals out there that market themselves as healthy. And the reality is, it is not. Usually, cereals are heavy in carbohydrates and honestly should be avoided altogether if you're a type 2 diabetic. The smoothie, a lot of people get themselves into trouble with the smoothies. It's one thing when you make it at home, but when you're making it, when you're buying it out, you get even into more trouble. So if you're going to those smoothie spots, then very likely the combination is destroying your blood sugar. So are smoothies healthy? It might be. You might make a healthy smoothie, but again, what's healthy for the average person is not necessarily healthy for you who's struggling with type 2 diabetes. So it's really about combining your ingredients into your smoothie in a way that is focused on blood sugar control. And again, it's really understanding how much protein are you getting in it? How much carbohydrates? Are there any sugars in it? So making a smoothie at home is definitely the better bet, but making it at home with the understanding of what is healthy. Juicing, I do not recommend because juicing removes the fiber from the fruit. It concentrates the sugar into juice. So juicing is not good. And I would, if you're doing that, then I would not, I would abandon juicing, at least juicing fruits. If you are having things like kale, in reasonable amounts, then you should be okay. But if you are juicing fruits, sweet things, you're putting, banana in your smoothie, banana in your juices, you are ending up with even more problems. You're doing oranges, you're doing all the sweet stuff. You're ending up with a lot of trouble there. Um, and so the bonus myth that I wanted to add is, do medications alone fix your blood sugar? And my answer to that is no. And how do you know it's not fixing your blood sugar? Well, the big question you should be asking yourself is, why are you on two medications or three medications for blood sugar? You're on two or three medications for blood sugar because it's not working, right? What's happening is medication is a band-aid. If you are not fixing the way you eat, then you're not getting to the root cause. And so you are using medication as the only way to put a band-aid. Well, what happens is, if you're not getting to the root cause, if you are not fixing your daily habits, your nutrition, if you're not fixing your physical activity, if you are not doing those things in combination, then what tends to happen is the medication will stop working. And now you get the second and you get the third. Then you end up on insulin. Now you have the numbness and the tingling in your hands and feet. Now you have kidney problems. Now, you're in and out of the hospital with wound infections on your legs. And so that is how the snowball effect happens. So medications play a role, but should you rely solely on the medication? No, because that is how people end up on two, three, four, then insulin. Okay. And not only does your blood sugar get worse, but with blood sugar comes the other issues, right? So if you're on two medications right now and you're thinking your medications are going to fix everything, it's not. And what happens is your blood sugars cause havoc in the rest of your body. So now you're ending up with heart disease. You have heart disease. Now, guess what? You end up on medications for your heart disease. You end up on medications for your kidney disease. You end up on medications to relieve the pain in your hands and feet, right? Like gabapentin and Lyrica. You end up desperate for those medications because of the discomfort from neuropathy. So now your medication list is building and building and building, all because you're not getting to the root cause, because you're relying on, you looked at it from the beginning and said the medication will control my blood sugar. But the reality is that is how people end up on multiple meds. And then diabetes morphs into other issues. And now you have to take even more meds for those issues. Cholesterol medicine is actually usually the next one to come, right? You're diagnosed with diabetes, and then you end up on a cholesterol medicine because insulin resistance goes hand in hand with lipid problems, with cholesterol problems, right? So it becomes a cascade effect. So even though you're on medications, does that mean you don't do anything about diabetes naturally? You absolutely should be doing something about it naturally, because medications alone don't fix the problem. So that is it for me tonight. One of the things I wanted to highlight is the system that I work with and how it helps with blood sugar. And so I wanted to show exactly how quickly just adjusting certain things in your diet, your habits, your exercise, again, putting the system together, and how much it can really make a difference. So these are two of the women I have worked with within the last 3 months or so. And I want to show how quickly their blood sugars responded to just, again, natural approach. No supplements, no intermittent fasting, no starvation diets, but the natural approach that made them feel energetic and in control of their health. So if you see here, I circled the number 119. That was Wilma's average blood sugars when she first started fasting blood sugars. And as you can see very quickly, in the span of 5 days, just by making simple changes, her blood sugar dropped dramatically. She went from 120 on average. And when she came in, she was actively eating one meal a day, and still couldn't understand why her blood sugars were so high. And within 5 days, I have to give her hats off because she trusted the process. She trusted the process fully, really, immersed herself and did so well that within 5 days her blood sugars responded. So now we're not done there. So she went from a very abnormal blood sugar to now her numbers are, oh, let me pull it back up. Okay. So look carefully what happens as the screen scrolls up. So we're in the 90s after 5 days. So she goes from 120 to the 90s blood sugar in 5 days. But look what happens over about 3 weeks. Her blood sugars respond yet again. And now she's in the 80s, steadily hanging in the 80s. Now her blood sugars are in the normal range. So she went from, the 120s, and now she's steadily in the normal range. And this is all because she trusted the process, and it happened very quickly for her. So this happened within 30 days, 35 days. She was hanging out steadily in the normal range. And you see solidly in the 80s. So it just shows you, the system and the approach that we use really does work. It works quickly. You're not miserable through the process. It's all about having the right strategy and not relying on, on fads or gimmicks or supplements, but really just taking the time to understand your nutrition and how your nutrition as a centerpiece and how your habits and everything else can influence your blood sugars by fixing everything else around nutrition. Um, so that covers it for tonight. I hope that you took some points away from this, and I always look forward to coming on here. At least I try to make it every night, or every other night. But I hope you took some points away, and I hope that you are feeling empowered to make changes, to implement a system. And I hope now it's very possible to turn your numbers around from the example I just showed. If you are really serious about reversing type 2 diabetes naturally, if you are driven and ready, then there's opportunity to actually enroll into the program where we can work together to get your numbers down. We do start with a 15-minute discovery call for us to introduce ourselves, for us to understand what your unique goals are, your unique challenges are, to make sure that we're the right fit and that you really fit into what we do. And so there is opportunity for those who are truly serious about taking steps for their health. If you're just thinking about it or you're not too sure, then that call isn't for you. Reserve that spot for people who are really ready to make a change. Then you just go ahead, click the link in my bio, and book that free 15-minute discovery call. My wellness coordinator, Yuri, is awesome. We work side by side. She does that call with you. She's very knowledgeable about what your journey should be, very knowledgeable about how to achieve the transformation. And so she does that call initially, and if you are truly ready, then we can move on to a full consult. That consult is done with me. So take that step. Don't procrastinate. Stop procrastinating, because the more you procrastinate, the more open you are to complications, and the more you procrastinate, then the worse things get, right? The more your anxiety grows. So, overcoming this naturally, avoiding medications, is all about the action, taking the steps that you need. I hope you feel empowered walking away from this talk tonight, and I will see you guys soon. And one more thing, if there are any topics you want me to cover, any questions, then feel free to put a comment under this live, or you can DM me directly if it's something really personal or something you don't want to share. And I will definitely respond. I'm very responsive. With that, have a good night, everyone.